Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the ultimate thought experiment. What actually happens to our society, our economy, and our deeply held human psyche when every single American home gets its own robot? And to be clear, we are not talking about science fiction set centuries from now. We're talking about the very real, very imminent implications of a technology that starts out small but quickly scales to absolutely everyone.
So let's unpack this, because it is fascinating how this plays out. It starts out feeling like a luxury, right? It's a toy for the rich, a futuristic gadget you show off to your friends at a dinner party. But almost overnight, it becomes an everyday reality. Imagine a robot in every apartment building, every suburban home, every farm, every bustling office, and every roadside diner. The moment that level of ownership becomes the baseline, the country we know simply stops being the country we know. It fundamentally transforms into something entirely different.
So, Phase 1. The promise of salvation. Now, at first glance, this doesn't look dangerous or disruptive at all. In fact, it looks like pure salvation for an exhausted American populace. Just look at how rapidly this builds. On day 1, it's a viral luxury tech gadget. Fast forward to month 6, 100,000 homes have one. It's a massive trend. And by year 2, complete ubiquity. Having a machine that calmly asks, "How can I help today?" becomes as normal as checking your smartphone or turning on the AC. The headlines are ecstatic, companies are booming, and we all tell ourselves that we are completely 100% in control.
And honestly, it's easy to see why we'd embrace it. I mean, suddenly, single mothers get some desperately needed breathing room as the robot sorts the laundry and keeps an eye on the baby. Small business owners get a pair of extra hands to walk the dog or organize their schedules. The elderly feel a lot less isolated with a reliable companion there to wash the dishes and help manage daily tasks. A productivity-obsessed nation immediately falls head over heels for machines that never sleep, never complain, and give us back our absolute most precious resource, time. It feels like a total win.
But then we hit Phase 2, the Great Economic Divide, because this immense everyday convenience eventually triggers an explosive economic disruption across the entire country. The ripple effects here are massive across all the major sectors: logistics, nursing, retail, administration. Jobs that rely on routine, physical work or service simply vanish or completely transform. A robot that does housework doesn't just put housekeepers out of a job, it reshapes cleaning services, appliance design, and the entire landscape of labor demand. It instantly polarizes the workforce. And here is the hidden curse of efficiency. If a robot helps you complete your work twice as fast, your employer might just expect you to produce twice as much. The pressure on human employees skyrockets. This disruption permanently splits America into two deeply emotional camps. On one side, you've got the utopians. They argue that humanity was never meant to spend its existence scrubbing floors or lifting heavy boxes anyway. They are celebrating the reduced drudgery and lower costs. But on the exact opposite side, the skeptics look at the exact same technology and see mass displacement, intense corporate dependence, and a terrifying scenario where humans are made completely economically useless. It takes a tech trend and turns it into one of the biggest political and moral debates in modern history.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room. What happens when everyone gets help from a robot, but not everyone gets a paycheck? The economy stops being just a dry debate about money, interest rates, and GDP. It becomes a brutal, deeply personal battle over human dignity. We'd start seeing incredibly intense arguments over things like robot taxes, totally rewriting the unemployment system, and whether we actually need to establish federally protected human-only zones.
Moving on to redesigning home and care. Let's zoom back in from the macroeconomy directly into the household, because having robots everywhere won't just change how we work, it will literally force us to redesign where we live and how we care for one another.
Our homes are going to morph into these human-machine ecosystems. Think about it. A robot needs space to move, it needs power, and it needs maintenance. So hallways will be widened, stairs might be completely phased out of modern design, charging docks will just be built directly into the walls like electrical outlets. We will literally start buying homes not just for ourselves, but for our machines. Imagine prioritizing your robot's charging dock over having a guest room. The robot becomes as central to our home life and survival as running water. And once they're inside our homes, humans simply won't be able to resist giving them emotional roles. We're going to start naming them, maybe dressing them up for Halloween, treating them like beloved companions. But this raises a fascinating and honestly slightly uncomfortable question. If a machine can imitate care, what exactly is care? If a robot can listen to you vent without judging, comfort you without getting exhausted, and stay faithfully by your side? What do we actually value in human relationships that a robot can't mimic? We are going to be forced to awkwardly compare our own messy, complicated human relationships to the perfectly patient, unjudging consistency of machinery sitting right there in the living room.
This brings us to security and surveillance, because as these incredibly helpful companions integrate into our daily routines, they simultaneously unlock a massive, unprecedented vulnerability for the entire nation.
We really have to rethink what intimacy means here. This is intimacy in the digital age, the exchange of deeply personal data, daily habits, and behavioral vulnerabilities in return for unprecedented convenience and health monitoring. While robots might drastically improve our life expectancy and provide literal life-saving emergency support, they do it by trading away our privacy. Basically, the more genuinely helpful a robot becomes to you, the more intimately it has to know your private life.
Just think about the sheer amount of data a household robot gathers. It knows exactly when you wake up and when you go to sleep. It knows what you eat, what you buy. It knows who you talk to and exactly how often you argue with them. It knows what makes you anxious and how you behave when you are absolutely certain nobody is watching. Now take that relentless tracking and multiply it across hundreds of millions of Americans. What you end up with is a dual-use surveillance network unlike anything the world has ever seen, handing unbelievable amounts of data over to corporations, hackers, and military strategists.
There's this fantastic quote that captures this dynamic perfectly. Not all power is loud. Some of it arrives through convenience. The robot revolution isn't going to be some violent, loud takeover. It is fundamentally a quiet power revolution. When control over your everyday comfort gets tied up with an external system, that system silently gains control over your everyday life.
Finally, the ultimate human test. For our last phase, we're going to push in incredibly close. We need to look at the deep psychological and emotional interior of the human beings who are actually living in this highly automated new world. Think about it, a whole generation of children being raised by perfectly patient machine tutors. A robot can adapt to a child's pace flawlessly. It's always available, provides perfectly optimized guidance, and literally never gets frustrated. But there is a very strange danger hiding there. Human development is messy. It actually requires frustration, disappointment, conflict, and real emotional friction to build independent thought and resilience. If kids learn from a machine that perfectly optimizes everything for them, do they ever learn how to handle discomfort and disagreement?
And honestly, it's not just the kids. The human ego is going to start to wobble. If robots take over all the boring parts of life and they become the reliable, highly efficient ones in the household, humans might face a catastrophic loss of meaning. If the machine handles everything so effortlessly and perfectly, we might start feeling slower, weaker, and fundamentally less essential by comparison. The human ego is really not used to being the second most capable entity in its own living room. So ultimately, the deepest fear here isn't that machines become human, but that humans become machine-like in response. Like I said, the real danger isn't some cinematic robot rebellion where the machines take up arms. The danger is far more subtle. It's that we become so hopelessly dependent on algorithmic convenience that our own internal muscles of effort, cooperation, and patience just atrophy. We might become incredibly efficient, sure, but a whole lot less alive. We are really forced to realize that technology is not just about what it can do. It is about what it slowly changes in us while doing it. This kind of ubiquitous technology isn't just an external tool replacing human labor. It acts as a mirror. It actively reshapes our internal humanity, changing how we view work, care, privacy, and our own self-worth.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final hanging question. Do we use robots to become freer, or do we forget what being human actually means? Because the arrival of the robot isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. When the dust finally settles on this revolution, will this technology give us our time, our art, and our dignity back? Or will it make us so incredibly comfortable that we slowly forget how to live without it? It's a choice we are going to have to make. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.